everyone, and welcome to the Debrief on ABC News Live. I'm Kimberly Brooks. Thanks so much for joining us. We're talking about President Trump's rally in Orlando last night, plus the Phoenix couple who was manhandled by police were able to confront the mayor in a town hall. So we're checking that out, and we're down taking a close look at the Mexican-Guatemalan border. But first, here are your headlines.
The UN human rights expert investigating the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi says now there's enough evidence to investigate whether the Saudi crown prince was involved.
The first important message I think my report highlights is the fact that the execution of Mr. Khashoggi was the responsibility of the state of Saudi Arabia.
Khashoggi was killed at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. The national police chief in the Netherlands now says 3 Russians and a Ukrainian have been charged with the downing of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 in 2014. All 298 people on board died. None of the suspects will be extradited.
A new move to improve safety for our Major League Baseball fans. The Chicago White Sox will become the first team to extend the protective netting at their ballpark to reach the foul poles. It comes 3 weeks after a girl was injured by a foul ball in Houston.
Who's the best Batman? A new poll from The Hollywood Reporter and Morning Consult says Christian Bale is the favorite by just a tiny bit, 39% to Michael Keaton's 38%. Val Kilmer is the least favorite.
Some fishermen off the Jersey Shore coast got an up-close encounter with a great white shark. A 16-foot great white tearing off a bag of bait before swimming away.
That shark came in through that whole trail of bait that we were doing, and he went straight for the source.
And we begin in Washington. President Trump held a major rally in Orlando yesterday. It was billed as the official kickoff of the Trump 2020 campaign. But listening to his speech, it sounded a lot like 2016. So take a listen.
You remember during one of the debates when crooked Hillary said, "If I win, are you going to support me?" But I must be honest, I didn't give her a great answer. If you want to know how the system is rigged, just compare how they came after us for 3 years with everything they have versus the free pass they gave to Hillary and her aides after they set up an illegal server, destroyed evidence, deleted and acid-washed 33,000 emails, exposed classified information, and turned the State Department into a pay-for-play cash machine.
So I want to bring in Karen Travers at the White House. Karen, it's 2019. There are 23 Democrats that are running for president, and President Trump is talking about Hillary Clinton. What's going on?
And she is not one of those 23 Democratic candidates, despite what it may have sounded like in President Trump's campaign kickoff rally last night in Orlando. Kimberly, our very smart colleague John Carl, I think, put it best. The president has a new slogan, "Keep America Great," but he's bringing back some of his old hits and going after old rivals with old attack lines. It's an interesting strategy from the president, but when you really look at the last 2.5 years, he's really never stopped campaigning. So last night was the official kickoff of his re-election campaign, but he's been out there every couple of weeks since taking office, doing rallies, revving up supporters and pushing his agenda and message. Now he's doing it in a more official way, but it's striking how stuck in 2015 and 2016 he is. He barely mentioned the Democratic candidates last night. Also the economy. It's the big thing that Republicans want him to talk about most. They say this is a winning message for the Trump administration. They have to highlight this and not get on some of the petty battles the president's been having for the last couple of years. I think it's going to be interesting to see how he develops this campaign message over the next 1.5 years. Last night, the economy, though, wasn't the big focus for the president.
Yeah, definitely. And in the meantime, it was a surprise move, but acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan is out of the running to take the job permanently. So what happened there?
Yeah, he told the president personally that he was taking himself out of the nomination process. The president spoke about this yesterday to reporters on the South Lawn. The president said he did a wonderful job, but that Shanahan is not going to go forward. He says he's a terrific person who's going through a difficult time and that he's taking himself out of this process in order to spend time and focus on his family. There was a report in the Washington Post about a couple of domestic violence incidents in the Shanahan family. 2010, there was an incident between Shanahan and his now ex-wife, and then the next year, his then teenage son, who was accused with a really brutal assault on his mother. Details that the Washington Post went through there. Shanahan did an extensive interview with the Washington Post talking about this, talking about how painful this is and how he didn't want to see this all brought out into the public. I should note, though, Kimberly, that he, before becoming the acting defense secretary, was serving as a deputy secretary of defense for a year and a half at the Pentagon. Certainly went through a vetting process for that position. These incidents are just now coming to light. The president said he only learned about it this week.
Yeah, so you said he was in office before. What does that say about the vetting process at the White House?
I think there are going to be a lot of questions about this in terms of what was presented to Capitol Hill, the relevant committees that would have looked at a position like that. I think it's also noteworthy that now there's another acting Secretary of Defense, the Army Secretary, who's going to move over into this position. The president has a lot of acting top officials. He says he likes it this way because it gives him flexibility. A lot of grumbling, though, on Capitol Hill about not moving forward on these nominations, doing it through the appropriate process of confirmation hearings where lawmakers get to ask these officials questions.
All right, Karen Travers at the White House, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. And guys, we're going to stay in Washington. Former White House Communications Director Hope Hicks is testifying on the Hill. She's the first senior administration official named in the Mueller report to testify. So Catherine Falders joins us on Capitol Hill with more. Catherine, do we know if she's giving new information to Congress today?
Yeah, well, she's been behind closed doors for about 2 hours now. Democrats have been questioning her. And look, that's a great question. Are we getting new information? Are they hearing new information? What we've learned from them so far, we've talked to some Democratic lawmakers exiting the room who have had a chance to question her. They say that she's answering some questions, those questions about the campaign, but nothing as it relates to her time at the White House. Now, you know that the White House last night sent a letter to the committee saying that she was immune from testifying regarding any events that related to her time at the White House. So what Democratic lawmakers are saying so far is that White House counsel is with her and they are objecting to most of those questions. Now, Republicans will now have the opportunity to question her also, but we expect for her to be in there most of the afternoon. Now, look, the lawmakers that we spoke to that said she's not answering questions about her time at the White House, we've asked them what's next, and they've brought up litigation and that potentially this could go to the courts, and some of these lawmakers are saying that this is just the president obstructing justice. Kimberly.
Yeah, so the Democrats will take some sort of action if she refuses to answer any of their questions?
Look, that's what we're gathering from them right now. Of course, we don't have any firm answer on this. This testimony is only 2 hours underway, and it's behind closed doors. But what I will say is that we will be getting a transcript of this. It will be made public in the next 48 hours. We expect to potentially get it tomorrow. So, look, any action that's taken is up to the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Jerry Nadler, who came out and spoke with us a little while ago and said, look, she's answering some questions, so we'll wait to hear from him again. But, it's up to them whether they take any action in the courts.
And it's worth asking, since you're here, do you think Mueller is ever going to testify? Where do we stand on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, Democrats will still say that they're negotiating with his team. They say they still want to hear from him. There's really no firm timetable on that. They say before the end of the summer. But look, I think negotiations aren't currently ongoing every day as they were before. I think the focus now is on those senior advisors, on those people who were specifically named in the Mueller report, like Hope Hicks and some others.
All right, Catherine Falders right there on Capitol Hill. Thank you so much. And guys, next, a rocket attack injuring several people at an Exxon building in southern Iraq. This coming after separate attacks on U.S. troops in the past few days. So Martha Raddatz is in Washington to break it all down. Martha?
Good morning, Kimberly. You know, you just have to take a look at these images from Iraqi TV of the aftermath of the attack to see how serious it was. This was a Katyusha rocket landing right in the middle of a housing facility of an oil drilling site. This was in southern Iraq, in Basra province. This is where several international oil companies operate, including ExxonMobil. The attack wounded 3 Iraqi workers, and Exxon is now quickly evacuating more than 20 foreign workers. And that evacuation will include Americans. This is, of course, raising alarms because of the increasing number of attacks in the region, attacks the U.S. blames on Iran. Not only those attacks on the oil tankers near the Strait of Hormuz, we've been seeing evidence about that all week, but the U.S. has already removed hundreds of diplomatic personnel from Iraq because of unspecified threats from Iran, and there was a recent attack near the embassy. And right now, we have more than 1,000 additional troops heading for the region to provide added protection to the forces already there and to protect U.S. and allied interests in this very volatile part of the world. Kimberly?
All right. Thank you so much, Martha. We appreciate that. And in other news, President Trump is still refusing to apologize for his harsh comments in 1989 about the young boys formerly known as the Central Park Five. Take a listen.
Mr. President, will you apologize to the Central Park Five? They've been exonerated. There have been videos and movies shown about the case, and you came out with a full-page ad saying that they should die, that they should have the death penalty.
Why do you bring that question up now? It's an interesting time to bring it up. You have people on both sides of that. They admitted their guilt. If you look at Linda Fairstein and if you look at some of the prosecutors, they think that the city should never have settled that case. So we'll leave it at that.
He said they admitted their guilt, but reminder, Corey, Yusuf, Kevin, Raymond, and Antron were wrongfully convicted of brutally raping a jogger in New York City after police coerced them to confess to the crime they didn't commit. And as a private citizen during this time, President Trump took out full-page ads calling for the 5 young Black and Latino boys to receive the death penalty. And after serving many years in prison, they were completely exonerated in 2002. And we move on to Capitol Hill, where big discussions are happening today on a hot-button topic, a centuries-old debate on reparations. A House Judiciary Subcommittee holding the first hearing in more than a decade to discuss the impact on descendants of 4 million Africans enslaved and discriminated against in the United States of America. Actor Danny Glover, an award-winning author of the popular essay, The Case for Reparations, Ta-Nehisi Coates, are making appearances. So I want to bring in Matthew Vann, who's right there at the hearing. Matthew, good to see you. Can you just explain to us why this hearing is so monumental?
Kimberly, this hearing basically is so monumental, namely because this is the first time, since 2007, that Congress has not had a hearing on reparations in more than 12 years. And at issue at this particular hearing is a bill proposed by Texas Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, which would create a commission on slavery, examining its impact, examining the impact of Jim Crow. And this is a issue that a number of 2020 candidates have already weighed in on, from Senators Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, saying that they support the idea of this commission, to presidential hopefuls Bernie Sanders, who says that, writing a check, simply cutting a check to African Americans is not nearly enough to address issues of financial and economic disparity in that community. Now, we did hear yesterday from Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who voiced blunt opposition to the idea of reparations. Take a listen to what he said.
I don't think reparations for something that happened 150 years ago, for whom none of us currently living are responsible, is a good idea. We've tried to deal with our original sin of slavery by fighting a civil war, by passing landmark civil rights legislation. We elected an African-American president. No one currently alive was responsible for that. And I don't think we should be trying to figure out how to compensate for it. First of all, it'd be pretty hard to figure out who to compensate.
So very interesting comment there. Matt, why do you think this discussion is so controversial? Because it is.
Kimberly, clearly a lot of varying and divisive viewpoints on the issue. I mean, you've got a number of presidential candidates saying that, you know, this is a great idea, reparations. And even in Congress, Kimberly, there is clear division. You heard right there from Senator Mitch McConnell, you know, saying that it would probably even be impossible to give reparations to the number of countless descendants of slaves in this country. So this hearing, as you can see, we're also expecting to hear from Ta-Nehisi Coates, the author of The Case of Reparations. As you very well mentioned, he has been a very strong voice on this issue and actually thrust that conversation back into the national spotlight. We're also expecting to hear from Danny Glover, the actor that you may recall from The Color Purple. He's been a UN Goodwill ambassador on this issue and has fought for issues of civil rights and racial discrimination throughout his career. So, Kimberly, as you can see, this is just the start of a renewed conversation on this contentious matter.
All right, Matthew Van, right there on the Hill. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to keep our eye on this. Thank you. And we mentioned Ta-Nehisi Coates several times there. So here's part of his powerful opening statement. Take a look.
Majority Leader McConnell cited civil rights legislation yesterday, as well he should, because he was alive to witness the harassment, jailing, and betrayal of those responsible for that legislation by a government sworn to protect them. He was alive for the redlining of Chicago and the looting of black homeowners of some $4 billion. Victims of that plunder are very much alive today. I am sure they'd love a word with the Majority Leader. What they know, what this committee must know, is that while emancipation dead-bolted the door against the bandits of America, Jim Crow wedged the windows wide open. And that is the thing about Senator McConnell's something. It was 150 years ago, and it was right now.
Yeah, pretty powerful there. And it's no coincidence that this reparation hearing coincides on June 19th or Juneteenth, a holiday celebrating the emancipation of the slaves. You might not really know about it because it's usually not taught in American history classes, but it's not the date of the signing of the Emancipation of Proclamation in 1863, which technically freed 4 million slaves. It's actually 2.5 years later in 1865, 2 months after the Civil War ended. Why? Because news traveled slow, and so did the freedom. And many slave owners weren't keen on the idea of letting their property go, especially in Texas. It wasn't until June 19th, 1865, that a Union general came to Galveston, Texas, deep in the Confederacy, and made the announcement. Can you imagine that day, learning you were actually free 2 months ago? Some people still believe the Civil War wasn't about slavery, but in any case, this holiday, this date, is meant to serve as a moment for everyone in the country to reflect and address the impact and consequences of this legacy. All right, so we move on. We've been talking about the Phoenix couple, a man and his pregnant fiance, at the center of that controversial video where police officers pulled out guns and threatened to shoot them in front of their 2 children. The couple was able to confront the city's mayor and police chief at a community meeting last night. So take a look at this.
Nobody should ever try to justify what happened that day on that video. Nobody. They're trying to hurt us because she took a doll. And it hurts to see that this is what happened when someone shoplifts or whatever. If you think it's about stealing or whatever, mass murderers get walked down and without a scratch.
All right, so Adrian Bankert's on the ground in Phoenix with more. Adrian?
Hi, Kimberly. Yes, this was the site of that community meeting overnight where police, the mayor, and other city leaders were on a panel. The intention was not for those leaders to respond in full to the members of the community who decided to get on the mic and air their frustrations or address this case with the young couple at the center of this police controversy, but it was a listening session. Though the mayor did speak, apologizing again for the actions of these officers from the May 27th event where they drew their weapons weapons on this young couple, this family, after pulling them over upon suspicions of shoplifting at a nearby store. The chief of police addressed the crowd at least twice, saying that this was going to take a community-wide effort to establish trust and to instill real change in the city of Phoenix. We do know that Drayvon Ames and Aisha Harper were in their car when officers drew those guns on them in a parking lot of a nearby apartment complex after leaving the Family Dollar store nearby. Police released surveillance video this week which shows that couple, their 4-year-old daughter, and police allege it shows clearly that they took items out of the store without paying for them. Now, the details of the case were not discussed last night, though that was the reason that this meeting was called. Instead, a lot of people getting on the microphone to discuss their grievances, their frustrations with the Phoenix Police Department, many of them citing previous cases and other police-involved interaction. Now, we do know this, that the chief of police and the mayor have vowed to have more community discussions just like this one. Drayvon Ames and Aisha Harper were present at the meeting yesterday, but they left after they made their comments. About an hour into the meeting, there were about 2,500 people here in attendance, and unanimously they were impassioned. There was a lot of raw emotion here, just in terms of the police and the community and the disconnect here in the city of Phoenix. But again, the hopes are that they will have more community meetings and town halls just like this one soon. Kimberly?
All right. Thank you, Adrian, for those updates. And we have new details on the shooting of baseball star David Ortiz in the Dominican Republic. Victor Oquendo is in Punta Cana with the latest. Victor?
Kimberly, it's now been more than a week since David Ortiz was shot here in the Dominican Republic. And later today, we expect to hear from prosecutors who have been putting this together all along. And we hope to learn two of the major missing pieces to this puzzle, the motive behind the attack and who ordered it. An 11th suspect now under arrest in connection with the plot to assassinate the former slugger. Sources say police think he rented one of the cars used in the shooting. Police are also looking for yet another suspect who they believe paid the hitmen to carry out the shooting, but say that person is not necessarily the one who ordered the attack. Meanwhile, David Ortiz is still in the hospital, but he is improving. Ortiz's wife releasing a statement saying doctors have upgraded his condition to good. Tiffany Ortiz went on to say that David's journey to good health has been bolstered by the many expressions of love that have come to us from across the globe. Your support has lifted his spirits tremendously during this challenging time. Kimberly?
All right. Thank you so much, Victor. And guys, we talk a lot about the humanitarian crisis at the border, but what are things actually like for people trying to get from Mexico to Central America, So our Daniel Carranza is at the border of Mexico and Guatemala with more. Daniel?
Hi, Kimberly. I'm in Ciudad Hidalgo, Chiapas. I'm right aside the Rio Suchiate. On the other side, you can see Guatemalan territory. This is one of the biggest crossing points all along the river. Hundreds of migrants and goods cross daily, jumping into these small rafts to Mexico. We can see men, we can see women and children from Central America and the Caribbean entering Mexico with the hope of reaching the United States. Basically, any person who decides to cross the river in exchange for 25 pesos, which is similar to $1, could enter Mexican territory. So far, and after being in both sides of the river, we haven't seen any authority who checks any paperwork or documents. Past week, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, President of Mexico, promised 6,000 elements of the Guardia Nacional to prevent this crossing and this kind of flow. Till the moment, we haven't seen any. Kimberly.
Thank you, Daniel. And guys, we're going to turn to a little bit of lighter news. While the Toronto Raptors are still celebrating their NBA championship, all eyes in the basketball world turn to tomorrow's NBA draft. Duke star Zion Williamson is expected to be the #1 pick. And ahead of the draft, he sat down with our own Robin Roberts. So check this out.
Everyone is saying with the first pick, the New Orleans Pelicans are going to say your name. What goes through your mind when you think about that #1 pick?
I never saw myself as even being a top 3, top 4 pick, and for people to think that I can go 1, it means a lot to me. It's showing that my hard work is paying off, but I just want to get drafted, period.
#1 picks, LeBron, Shaq, Zion. Going by first name only. Don't even need a second name. I mean, those are some big shoes to fill. You ready?
those are big shoes to fill, but I'm not looking to fill those. I'm looking to just be the best Zion I can be.
When's the first time you had a basketball in your hands?
Probably before I can probably remember.
Zion was just 5 years old when he told his mother he wanted to be a professional basketball player. What was it like being coached by your mom?
I stand by this till this day. She was the hardest coach I ever had. Don't let that mom word fool y'all. Would be in the car riding back home after my middle school games. I said I'd be like, yeah, that was a great game. My mom would be like, what? Good game. You missed the pass there. You didn't shoot it there. Her being my biggest critic was the best thing for me, actually.
I didn't even have to know that you were here. I could hear that you were here by the reaction from those young kids. And I know that you spend time with kids. Why is that so important to you to do that? Because
I was a little kid once, and having the chance to meet an NBA player or even a college player when I'm 5 or 6, I know it would mean a lot. So just to talk to those little kids or sign something, I try to do it as much as possible.
Just hours away from now, your life is going to change.
I don't see it so much as my life changing. I'm going to still be playing the game I love. I feel like with the circle I have around me, that they'll keep my life the same as it's always been. Just probably more people calling my name.
There's going to be a lot of people saying Zion. Tomorrow's going to be a day to remember. So, guys, we continue to celebrate Pride Month, and the 2020 presidential candidates are trying to make some waves. Former Vice President Joe Biden making a surprise visit to Stonewall Inn, the historic site of the Stonewall Uprising in 1969, and now, no doubt, an iconic symbol and structure for the LGBTQ community. You can see him here talking to people and snapping selfies. And as you know, Biden was an early supporter of same-sex marriage, and we're going to have plenty more coverage of Pride Month. I'll be anchoring coverage of the Pride Parade Sunday, June 30th, right here on ABC News Live, and coverage will start at 11 a.m. Eastern. So, my friends, I hope you continue to take care of yourselves, and if you're around, you can stick around for the briefing room at 3:30 p.m., then check out World News Prime at 8 p.m., and if you want to stay updated on all of these headlines, you can go to abcnews.com or download the app. I'm Kimberly Brooks, and I'll see you tomorrow.